Okay, today we're going to continue talking about food safety. So, food safety is important because none of us like to be sick, especially when the cause of the illness is going to come from our favorite food, because nothing will ruin your favorite food like getting food poisoning. So, the best way to prevent getting sick from what you eat is to know how to properly prepare food and how to properly store food so that it can keep you safe. That also includes good hygiene, preventing cross-contamination, cooking foods to their proper temperatures, and avoiding mistakes in food preparation that can keep you healthy, which can keep you healthy, and reduce your risk of contracting foodborne illness. So bacteria are tiny one-celled microorganisms, and they are found everywhere in the environment. So bacteria can sometimes be called microbes. Some microbes can be safe and they can be eaten in food form, so think like cheese and yogurt, but others are not so great for us and they can be harmful and they can cause foodborne illness. So foodborne illness is caused by eating food that's contaminated by bacteria, viruses, or even parasites. Cross-contamination occurs when harmful bacteria from one food source is then transferred to another. We're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Fat Tom. So Fat Tom is a mnemonic device, or it's an acronym, that's going to help you to remember the conditions that are needed in order for bacteria to grow. So they include food, acidity, temperature, time, oxygen, and moisture, all of which help to influence the growth of bacteria. So bacteria need nutrients to grow and multiply rapidly, but they're especially kind of prevalent in protein foods like meat, poultry, eggs, milk, fish, and carbohydrate-rich foods like cooked rice, beans, and potatoes. So these foods are considered potentially hazardous foods because they support the growth of harmful bacteria that cause foodborne illness. So another aspect of the conditions in which bacteria grow is acidity. So bacteria grow best in foods that have a neutral or slightly acidic pH. So pH is the degree of acidity or alkalinity of a substance that is measured on a scale from 0 to 14, as you can see in the scale, the colorful scale that's on the right-hand side. So a pH of 7 is usually considered neutral, so foods that are below that point are considered acidic, and foods that are above that point are considered alkaline. Most microorganisms like a pH between 6.6 and 7.5. Microorganisms also really like a warm temperature to grow. So bacteria rapidly multiply between 40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, so we like to call this the temperature danger zone. So anything that's supposed to be kept cold should be kept below 40 degrees, and anything that's supposed to be kept warm should be kept above 140 degrees. So freezing and refrigerating will stop or slow the growth, but it's not going to kill bacteria. So warmer temperatures than 140 degrees will stop the growth of most microorganisms, so that's also helpful. But we just don't want to be in that 40 to 140 degree range. Time is also another factor. So with favorable conditions, bacteria can double every 20 minutes. So that's insane. So risky foods that are left at room temperature for 2 hours or more, or even 1 hour if the temperature is above 90 degrees, are unsafe to eat and they should be discarded. There are ways that you can kind of work around this. So if you have food on a buffet, for example, there are certain ways that you can keep cold foods cold. So if you have like a tray of ice underneath whatever it is that you're supposed to keep cold, that will help to keep the temperature to where it needs to be. And then the same goes for things that need to be kept warm. They have small burners that you can set up under some like warming trays to make sure that the food stays at the correct temperature. So oxygen is another, condition for bacteria growth. So some bacteria need oxygen to grow, so that means that they are aerobic, while other bacteria can kind of live and grow and survive without oxygen, which means that they are anaerobic. So canned foods don't have much oxygen available for aerobic microorganisms to grow, but some microorganisms can grow in anaerobic conditions like botulism, and we're going to talk about that one in a little bit. Okay, another one that we have is moisture. So most microorganisms need moisture to grow. So we can control bacteria growth by controlling the water that's available. So dry foods like crackers and cereal tend to be safe to eat at room temperature because they don't have moisture to encourage bacterial growth. To fight bacteria that cause foodborne illness, we want to make sure that we're following these 5 steps to make sure that we're cooking and preparing our food safely. So we want to make sure that we are cooking foods thoroughly, that we are keeping food separated and not cross-contaminating, that we're storing food at proper temperatures in the refrigerator, that we're making sure that all surfaces, dishes, utensils, and anything that we're coming in contact with is clean when we're preparing foods, and then avoiding foods that might put you at risk for contracting foodborne illness. So cooking your food to the proper internal temperature can very greatly reduce your risk of getting sick from foods that you eat. So foods that are properly cooked when they're heated to a long enough time in temperature are better at making sure that the harmful bacteria are kind of killed or eliminated. So when you reheat leftovers, you want to make sure that you're bringing those to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit, and you always want to try to boil sauces, soups, and gravies. So some of you may have seen on restaurant menus that there's a little disclaimer that says eating raw or undercooked meat could cause illness. This is why they have that on there. So if you are someone who likes to order your steak rare, you could be putting yourself at unnecessary risk. So separate means to separate raw meat and seafood from other foods in your shopping cart and in your refrigerator. So if available in the meat department of the grocery store, put raw meat into plastic bags. They're similar bags to the same bags that you would put like vegetables and produce in. They're just a really thin plastic, but it does do, as much as you can to make sure that you aren't going to contaminate the other items into your shopping cart. You also want to make sure that you're washing your hands, you're washing cutting boards, dishes, and utensils after they come in contact with raw meat, poultry, and eggs, and also unwashed produce. Always try to place your cooked foods on a clean plate. Place raw foods in a sealed container or in a plastic bag to prevent meat juices from dripping onto other foods, and make sure that you wipe up any meat juice spills from all surfaces at once. Okay, so let's talk about chill for a minute. So cold temperatures keep most harmful bacteria from multiplying, so we talked about that yesterday. So you want to make sure that you set your refrigerator to 40 degrees Fahrenheit or lower and your freezer to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Refrigerate prepared foods within 2 hours. And if a food has been out of the refrigerator for longer than 2 hours, it's best to just throw it out. So when in doubt, toss it out. Try to learn to store perishable foods properly, so don't pack your refrigerator too full. So cold air has to be able to circulate in order to keep food safe. So if your refrigerator is just like packed to the gills, it may not be able to adequately cool, every product in there to what it should be. Divide large amounts of leftovers into small, shallow containers for quick cooling, and then marinate foods in the refrigerator, not on the counter. Always thaw foods in the refrigerator or in the microwave and never at room temperature. Use a cooler or ice pack to keep perishable foods cold when you're traveling or spending time outdoors, especially on hot summer days. So if you pack a lunch for school or for work, try to use an insulated lunch bag and an ice pack if there's no refrigeration available. Clean is also super important. So making sure that you're washing your hands with hot soapy water for at least 20 seconds before and after you handle food and after using the bathroom, handling pets, or changing diapers. So thoroughly scrub your hands, your wrists, your fingernails, rinse and dry your hands with a paper towel or a clean hand towel. If we were cooking in the lab, I would tell you that you always need to make sure that you're using a paper towel instead of a hand towel because whenever possible, we want to throw our germs away. So if you're using a dirty towel too, you can also contribute to cross-contamination without even knowing it. Wash raw produce under running water. Use a small vegetable brush to remove surface dirt if necessary. And then cut away any damaged or bruised areas on produce because bacteria thrive in these places. Also, make sure that you're using a paper towel to clean kitchen surfaces so that germs can be thrown away, as I said earlier. Wash cutting boards, counters, and all utensils with hot soapy water after you prepare each food item because you want to make sure that you're preventing cross-contamination. So some foods pose a much greater risk than other foods when it comes to foodborne illness. So risky foods include foods from an animal source like raw meat, poultry, eggs, fish, unpasteurized milk, and shellfish. Also unwashed fruits and vegetables, and then soft cheeses. When you're at the grocery store, it's really important to make sure that you're paying attention to the retail dates, so the sell-by date and the use-by date. So these are dates, the sell-by date is the date that the retailer knows how long to keep a product out for sale. It's recommended that the product be used within a few days of this date for maximum freshness, like flavor, aroma, and appearance. And then the use-by date tells the consumer the final date by which to use the product. So it is the recommended date for the product to be used for quality, flavor, aroma, and appearance. Product dates and recommendations are only reliable if the food has been kept at the proper temperature, though, during storing and handling. So remember, if it's not stored properly, it can go bad much more quickly. So remember that the sell-by date is for the retailer and the use-by date is for you, the consumer. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out who is at risk for foodborne illness, it's basically everyone. So there's no vaccine, there's no pill that you can take to prevent contracting foodborne illness. So every single person is at risk. So those who are especially at risk, though, are young children, the elderly, and then pregnant women, and also people with a compromised immune system. So foodborne illness occurs when you eat contaminated foods that carry the unwanted microorganisms into the body. So some of the microorganisms overcome the body's natural defenses, so they kind of attack your immune system, and then that's what causes the foodborne illness. So general symptoms of foodborne illness include nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, and diarrhea. So if you think that you know that somebody has contracted foodborne illness, you should contact your healthcare provider. So now we're going to talk about a few different types of foodborne illness. And I'm going to do my best to pronounce the microorganisms accurately. So this one is Campylobacter. The illness is Campylobacteriosis. The microorganism is Campylobacter jejuni. It is associated with undercooked poultry and contaminated water. So the illness occurs when poultry is improperly cooked or cross-contaminated with other foods. So you want to be very careful. This would cause diarrhea, cramping, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, fever, and a headache. Okay, we also have salmonella. So a lot of you have probably heard of this one before. The illness is salmonellosis. The microorganism is Salmonella. It's found in raw meats, poultry, eggs, and non-pasteurized milk. So it's commonly associated with poultry, eggs, dairy products, also beef and other products that come into contact with these animals or their waste. So illness can occur with a small amount of this bacteria, so it doesn't take much. So it's really important to make sure that you cook food to their proper temperature in an effort to make sure that you're preventing cross-contamination. This one is E. coli. So it is Escherichia coli. It's commonly known as just E. coli. It's found most often in contaminated produce or undercooked ground beef. And a person only needs to consume a very small amount, just like with salmonella. in order to become ill. So really making sure that you are cooking foods properly and preventing cross-contamination can help to prevent illness. So the symptoms include painful stomach cramps, bloody diarrhea, severe cases resulting in hemolytic uremic syndrome, or HUS. Okay, norovirus is often called the stomach flu. So sometimes it can be confused with the flu, which is more of a respiratory illness caused by the influenza virus. But the virus is contagious and typically transferred to foods when it's touched with unwashed hands. The best way to prevent illness from this virus is proper hand washing, especially after using the bathroom. So it's found in contaminated water from ready-to-eat foods and shellfish that's contaminated by sewage. And the symptoms include vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, abdominal cramps. Okay, so the next one we have is listeria. The illness is listeriosis. I was going to try to tackle the microorganism, but I am not sure I can. Listeria monocytogenes. It is found in soft cheeses, deli salads, cold smoked fish, hot dogs, deli meat, and raw milk. The symptoms include fever, muscle aches, occasional nausea or diarrhea. It's especially kind of harmful to pregnant women. It could cause spontaneous abortion. And to newborns, it could cause sepsis, pneumonia, and meningitis. So it's uncommon in healthy people, but it is, like I said, very serious for the high-risk population, including pregnant women. So the best way to prevent illness from listeria is to throw out foods that have passed their use-by or their expiration date. Okay, the next one we have is botulism. So botulism is found in home canned or improperly canned foods, oil infusions, baked potatoes that are wrapped in foil, vacuum packed and tightly wrapped foods. The symptoms include nausea, vomiting, muscle weakness, dry mouth, headache, double vision, slurred speech, and difficulty swallowing. So this is a bacteria that does not grow well in refrigerated or highly acidic foods, but it does grow without oxygen, and it can produce a deadly toxin when food is temperature abused. So as a consumer, there are some clues to figure out if that food contains a toxin. So always make sure that you're inspecting canned foods for bulges and dents, because this could indicate the presence of that toxin. Oops. Okay, and the last one that we have is staph. So this is found in deli meats, salads, including egg, tuna, chicken, and macaroni. Also cream-filled pastries. The symptoms include nausea, vomiting, and retching. So acting or kind of in the process of throwing up, but not actually throwing up. And then abdominal cramps. So cooking does not destroy these toxins, but practicing good hygiene can prevent the transfer of this bacteria to foods, and proper food storage can minimize the growth of bacteria in food. Okay, so here we have just kind of a quiz to see if you have been paying attention. So it's not for a grade, but it is a good idea to maybe pause this video and then look through these questions and see if you get them right. Same with these questions as well.